Imagine you are one of the world's most celebrated architects. After years of practice, you've designed projects that have reshaped architecture itself. Now governments, global corporations, and powerful institutions all want buildings that bear your signature. They invite you to design their most important national project. The budget is virtually unlimited. The world's best engineers are ready to work alongside you, and there are no limits to how far you can push your architectural ideas. But there is one problem. The government behind the project has a controversial record on freedom of expression, civil rights, or the treatment of political opponents. Now you're faced with a difficult question. If you accept the commission, are you creating a great work of architecture? Or are you, perhaps, unintentionally, helping build a positive image for a political regime? Over the past few decades, some of the world's most influential contemporary architects have faced exactly this dilemma, including Zaha Hadid and Rem Koolhaas.
But before judging the choices these architects made, we should ask a more fundamental question. Can architecture ever truly be separated from power? Derek will explain for us.
Looking back through architectural history, it's remarkably difficult to find an important building that was created entirely outside structures of power. For much of history, power has relied on architecture to make itself visible, and architecture in turn has almost always depended on power, capital, and major institutions in order to be built. So once architecture enters into a relationship with power, where is the line between design, collaboration, and legitimization? That is where our story begins. The story of two architects who became defining figures of contemporary architecture, yet arrived at very different answers to the relationship between architecture and power. Zaha Hadid and Rem Koolhaas. If we look at architecture purely through the lens of form and space, Zaha Hadid was undoubtedly one of the most influential architects of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Her buildings had a remarkable ability to become icons, and that was exactly what many governments and rapidly developing cities were looking for. In the age of globalization, countries don't simply need buildings. They need an image that tells the world, we are modern, we are moving forward, we belong to the future. With its striking visual language, Zaha Hadid's experimental architecture was uniquely capable of creating that image. That is why many of her landmark projects were commissioned by countries seeking a new place on the global stage. Countries such as Azerbaijan, China, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Yet this very relationship between architecture and power would also become one of the most controversial aspects of her career.
The issue here isn't just about a single building. Once architecture becomes a national symbol, the conversation is no longer only about form or beauty. It's also about the political and social meaning that building acquires within its broader context.
The Heydar Aliyev Center in Baku is one of Zaha Hadid's most celebrated works. With its flowing white curves and seemingly weightless form, the building quickly became an icon of contemporary architecture. Many architectural critics praised it for its spatial quality, structural innovation, and formal ambition, but alongside that admiration, another debate emerged. The building was named after Heydar Aliyev, the former president of Azerbaijan, a political figure whose government, along with those of his successors, has repeatedly faced criticism over restrictions on political freedoms and civil liberties. That led critics to raise a fundamental question. Can a building be both an outstanding architectural achievement and, at the same time, part of a government's political image-making? The debate became even more complicated, with projects connected to Qatar and the 2022 FIFA World Cup. During that period, numerous reports drew international attention to the harsh working conditions faced by migrant laborers on construction sites across Qatar. Although these criticisms were not directed specifically at all of Hadid's projects, Her name inevitably became part of the discussion. She had designed several major projects in Qatar and was one of the country's most internationally recognized architects. When asked whether architects should be held responsible for the working conditions of construction workers, Hadid argued that those issues fell under the responsibility of governments and contractors, not architects. Her response sparked intense debate.
Is an architect responsible only for what they design, or should they also be accountable for the conditions that make those projects possible?
Can architects work with power without allowing architecture to become an instrument of power? That same question confronted another architect, someone who had spent decades writing about the relationship between power, capital, and the modern city, Rem Koolhaas. Rem Koolhaas was never just an architect. He was also one of the most influential architectural theorists of our time. Unlike those who see architecture simply as the product of an individual designer's creativity, Koolhaas consistently argued the buildings emerge from a far more complex network of forces: capital, politics, technology, markets, and the institutions that make construction possible. For that reason, many expected him to take a strongly critical stance toward projects closely tied to political power. Yet in 2002, his firm, OMA, won the international competition to design the CCTV headquarters in Beijing.
The CCTV headquarters marked a turning point in Koolhaas's career, because this time the debate wasn't just about a building. It was about a deeper theoretical question. If architecture is always intertwined with power, should architects distance themselves from it, or should they try to work from within the system?
From an architectural standpoint, the CCTV headquarters was anything but conventional. At a time when most skyscrapers competed to project power through ever-increasing height, Koolhaas chose an entirely different direction. Instead of designing another vertical tower, he conceived a continuous loop, a pair of towers connected high above the ground to form a single structural circuit. But the real controversy wasn't the building's form, it was what the building represented. This was the headquarters of China Central Television, CCTV, the country's state broadcaster. At the time, the Chinese government was under intense international criticism for media censorship and restrictions on freedom of expression. Critics therefore raised an uncomfortable question: does designing such a building, even unintentionally, help strengthen the image of an authoritarian state? Some even argued that the project contradicted Koolhaas's own theoretical writings. Yet Koolhaas never tried to claim that the CCTV project was somehow detached from politics. On the contrary, his central argument was that architecture has always existed within structures of power. From his perspective, architects never operate in complete independence. They work with governments, corporations, investors, and institutions that make architecture possible in the first place. The real question, he argued, is not whether architects can avoid these systems, but how they can work within them while preserving the possibility of critical engagement.
Walking away from a project may seem like the more ethical choice, but perhaps all it really means is that someone else will build it instead. On the other hand, working from within the system carries its own risks. An architect may gradually become part of the very structure they once hoped to challenge.
Koolhaas's critics insisted that the issue wasn't simply about constructing a building. A major architectural project, especially one designed by a globally recognized architect, creates symbolic value. The CCTV headquarters wasn't merely a television office. It became part of China's global image. From this perspective, even if an architect has no intention of offering political support, their work may still contribute to legitimizing a structure of power. Supporters of Koolhaas, however, saw the issue differently. They argued that architecture has its greatest impact when it engages with the complexities of the real world, not when it retreats from them. Ultimately, this disagreement reflects two fundamentally different ways of understanding the role of architecture. The first argues that architecture should be evaluated primarily through its spatial quality, innovation, and human experience, independent of politics. The second insists that no significant building can ever be separated from the political, economic, and social conditions that produced it.
To understand this conflict more deeply, we need to return to a theorist who warned about the limits of architectural autonomy decades before these projects were ever built, Manfredo Tafuri.
Long before the CCTV headquarters was built, and long before projects like the Heydar Aliyev Center became global icons, Italian architectural historian and theorist Manfredo Tafuri had already raised a different question. Unlike many theorists who believed architecture could directly transform society, Tafuri took a far more skeptical position. He argued that modern architecture is far more deeply embedded in systems of power and economics than it often imagines. From Tafuri's perspective, the question isn't simply who an architect designs for. The deeper issue is this: the entire system that produces architecture, including capital, politics, markets, and powerful institutions, shapes what architects are able to imagine, design, and ultimately build. For that reason, Tafuri remained deeply skeptical of the idea that architecture could ever be completely autonomous. He argued that even architecture intended to criticize power might eventually become absorbed into the very system it seeks to challenge.
Tafuri's argument raises an even more difficult question. Perhaps the real issue isn't simply choosing between collaboration and refusal. Perhaps we should be asking whether architecture can ever exist outside network of power, capital, and politics in the first place.
For Tafuri, no matter how experimental, critical, or innovative architecture may become, it must still negotiate with the forces that make its realization possible. The relationship between architecture and power isn't limited to one country, one historical period, or one particular architect. It is embedded in the profession itself. In the end, perhaps the most important question isn't whether architects can completely distance themselves from power. History suggests that they almost never can.
The more important question is this: when architects enter into that relationship, how conscious are they of their own role and of the consequences of their decisions? Can they work with power without becoming part of it? Thanks for watching this video.